Yeah, welcome everyone to the Intro to Variable session. It's a session we are doing with friends of Figma Mumbai. And this is our first virtual event after the first in-person event, which we did very recently. This is the agenda for today. We are already done intro and intezar for the first 3 minutes. I'll talk a bit about me, but we'll also talk about you, who are the main people in the call today. I'll introduce you to variables with some basic examples, but the major part of today's event will be focusing on the variable demo, of course, but you should also know why you're using variables instead of something called styles in the first place. So we'll also focus a bit on the theory part, but we'll also do some in person. I will show some practical examples on how you can use variables in Figma. And yeah, I'm pretty excited for these 10 minutes wherein I show you some magic with advanced prototyping, and we'll end it with a Q&A and a small closing note. Talking about me, I'm Sooraj. I'm a design consultant at Fractal. I'm in office. I'm also the co-organizer at Friends of Figma Mumbai, which is the host of this event. Uh, my background is in computer engineering, so yes, I'm one of those guys who was in engineering, switched to design, self-taught designer. But yeah, I started my design career with Adobe XD, a tool which Adobe had, and yeah, I'm hearing news of Figma being acquired by Adobe as well, by the way. And yeah, I'm pretty much invested into Figma, and I used to do a podcast called Figma Fridays at my office, wherein I used to talk about Figma a lot, basically promoting it with all of these new tricks and tips. But this is a whole new stage for me, presenting in front of around 100, 200 people. We got around 250 registrations, which is pretty awesome. But yeah, this is enough about me. Uh, but before I go forward, I want to know how you feel, because this is something which I always do before I start any presentation. I want to know how you are feeling right now. So I think you would see a poll. You can click on the poll and just vote so that I can know some results. I know it's 8 p.m. ish, mostly after your college, after your office hours. Um, we're looking forward to the next 60 minutes. That's good. I'm happy there's no Manchester United fans because I am one and I know how painful it is. Uh, cool. I think a lot of people are looking forward to the next 60 minutes, which is great. Uh, but yeah, I also want to know, since this is hosted by FOF Mumbai, people say that Mumbai is not a city, it's an emotion, right? I want to know what's the very first thing that comes to your mind when you hear the word Mumbai. So you can put it in the chat. What's the first thing that comes to your mind when you hear about Mumbai? For me, it's local trains because that's iconic. I think Vada Pav, I agree with that as well. Marine Drive. Yeah, I think we always boast to Pune ki हमारे पास sea line hai, they don't have it. So Gateway of India, yes. Wake up said, great. Humidity and hot always, agreed. Organized chaos, that's a good way to put it. But yeah, City of Dreams. I see Ravan in here. Okay, that's unexpected. Cool. Okay, I think pretty all of us agree with a few points. SRK, I think I have to agree with it as well. But talking about you, another thing which I'm noticing is Thane has been pretty constant. So this is all the locations from where you guys are coming in. So 13% of the people here are from Thane. Around 9 to 7.5% are from Navi Mumbai. And we also have people from Bangalore who also mark their attendance. So welcome Bangaloreites to Mumbai for once, because I personally have lost a lot of friends going to Bangalore because everything is happening there. But Mumbai ka time aayega. And yeah, this is a rough representation of people who have come for this event. I think we got registrations across almost all the states, which is fabulous. That's the power of a virtual event. But we also got in registrations from folks in USA, England, and Portugal, which is very heartwarming. So thank you once again for joining us. When talking about experience, A lot of people here have an experience around 0 to 2 years. And then we have folks from college who are doing their engineering, design. And then we have also folks with 2 to 4 years of experience. There are people who are registered who also have 6+ years and 13 years of experience, which is a great diverse mix of people, which is pretty good. Okay. So this question is around variables. I'm asking this because I also want to know how efficient you are or proficient you are with variables so that I can tailor my next few slides as per the audience here. So again, you can see a poll that must have come. So there are four options. You're new to this topic, have heard about it but didn't try, tried it but need more clarity. And fourth is you know variables and you have used it in projects. Okay, there's a clear majority which is you have heard about variables, but you haven't tried about it. Okay. Okay. So I will basically tailor my pace accordingly since I know that. But talking about variables, so what are variables? The very basic definition of variable is that it's not staying the same. It's often changing. Um, and if you are a programmer, you would have heard this term day in and day out. Like it's a variable A, variable C, you're storing something. But Figma has introduced this thing to our design world. And if you want the definition from Figma's website, it says variables are reusable definitions like styles that can be assigned to various design attributes like color, numbers, and strings. A good thing to notice here is like styles. And I'll be talking about how different it is. So, however, unlike styles, variables can switch between definitions depending on the theme that is applied. So, styles are nothing but these things on the right. These are called styles. You can actually go and save a hex code and call it red 100, red 200, and you can reuse it throughout your project. But styles cannot change depending on what you wanted to do. For example, you want to create an application which is in a light mode and it's in a dark mode. You cannot do that with styles unless there's a lot of manual effort. But with variables, you can easily do it. So yeah, I'll give a few use cases on where you can use variables. First is switching your design in light, dark, and other contrast mode. And I believe in the concept of showing and telling instead of just telling. So what I'll do is I go to my Figma. So this deck has been made in Figma, no surprises. I click this, and if my consultant or my engineering team says, "Ki, you know what, मुझे dark mode चाहिए," I'll just go here, change it to dark. As simple as that. Standardize and switch between layouts. This again is a very common example. जहाँ पे your application can be in a mobile format, it can be in a tab format, it can be in a web layout. So usually you have to make it again and again. But again, using variables, what you have to do is go to cart size and click on tab, and automatically it will change the size to a tab. The third example is one of my favorites, wherein you have an application, it's in English, but one day you wake up and say, no, I want to launch this in India as well. So if you are doing it normally, it's a pain, but with variables, all you have to do is click here, go to card languages, select in Hindi. You'll notice that when I select Hindi, the dollar value changes to rupees as well. So these are some very common use cases you use variables for, which you cannot do with styles, by the way. So now comes the main part of what's the difference between variables and style. I've given you some demo of some extraordinary things which variables can do, which styles cannot. But before that, it's important to know how are they even similar in the first place. It's not as if they are very different. And even in the definition of variables, you must have noticed that it's pretty much like styles. So it's very good to know what's the difference between them. So both act as sources of truths. A lot of design systems, which you must have recently seen, or from times historical, that all of them are based on styles. So with variables, you can do the same. So that's one similarity. Second is styles and variables can both be published to team libraries and used throughout designs. So once you define the styles, you can publish it, and other people in other files can also download it and use it. So similarly, you can do it with variables as well. And the third is Both of these things will be very efficient in design system management, but there is a very good reason why you should choose variables over styles, which I'll be coming and covering through at the end. So these are some very common things which are similar between variables and styles. But now it's the time for the differences. As Master Ajay Devgan himself says, there are two major differences between variables and styles. The very first is color values. So styles, again, as I showed you, it's nothing but these things on the right. The good thing about styles is you can not only save colors, but you can actually create something called gradients. You can actually have something like a fill image. You can actually have GIFs, you can have videos, you can have blend modes. You can store a lot of things in styles. The sad thing is variables only stores colors. That's it. There's nothing else you can store in a variable. It's like a single thing at a time. You can store some string, you can store some colors, but you cannot do things like videos, GIFs, and everything as of now. They're planning to launch it in the next few months or early next year. But as of now, variables will only allow you to store colors, not a gradient, not a video, nothing else. The second difference majorly between a variable and a style is its appearance on the canvas. So for styles, it's like a stack of cards, one above the other. So if I change your ping 600 to above, your style will obviously change. If I move the image above, the image will be visible more. So you can consider styles as a stack of cards which are transparent. And obviously, as you can see, you can have multiple things. You can have a gradient, you can have an image, you can have a solid color. But with variables, again, the sad thing is since you can only store colors, and it's more like a set of cards. So it's like it's either light mode or dark mode. You cannot do a mix of both. So it's like a set of cards. You're dealt either this or that. But with styles, it's like a stack of cards. There are multiple things. So the basic takeaway here is that if you need reusable things like gradients, blend modes, images, etc., you use styles. GIFs, videos, they are pretty much usable. You can go with styles. You have to stick with styles as of now. But if you want to use reusable colors that respond to different modes like your dark mode, light mode, translation, device sizes, etc., you have to create a variable. And this is the basic takeaway for all the but which I've done till now. Okay, so those are some major differences. Ajay Devgan said that there are two differences, but I feel there's one more difference. And for that, I'll have to talk a bit about design tokens. So design tokens are nothing but they contain UI data like colors, fonts, spacing, etc. for styling and building cross-platform user interfaces. Another boring plain definition, but I prefer explaining it with an example to make it easy. I think design tokens are such a thing you must have heard a lot of times. I personally heard about design tokens a lot, but I rarely took an effort to go and search because design systems learning and understanding is a different thing in itself. It's a whole new chapter, which is like you have to unlock it. But I will give you a very simple example to understand a design token. So I love cats. So I have a cat at home. So I call it with some name. My mom calls it with some other name. My dad calls it something entirely different. But at the end of the day, the cat is the same, right? It's just different names. We as UI designers, we deal a lot with colors. So I'll give a color example now. So I have a hex code which I use a lot, 00FFD7. I'll give you two scenarios right now. So I have Rishabh here, who is the community advocate. Which one is the easier one to say? Hey Rishabh, can you use 00FFD7 for your button? Or is it easier to say, hey Rishabh, can you use green 100 for your button? The answer is pretty obvious. So at the end, all of these colors are the same, but the way you call it is different. So 00FFD7 for ease and for systemization, you call it green 100. Then you might add some context, which is, okay, green 100, great, I love that color. Where can we use it? So you add some context by saying primary background color. So we will use green 100 as primary background colors throughout the application. So that's the third level. But some companies, they unlock the fourth layer by mentioning, you know what, primary background color is fine, but where? Which component are you talking about? So you can unlock that by the fourth layer, which is button primary background color. which is like at a component level you have defined. The primary background color to theek hai, but it's for a button. You are so specific. So these are the four levels, and all of these four levels have some name. So the green 100 is basically the global tokens which store the primitive values. Semantic tokens are the ones wherein you give some context, कि ये क्या है, like it's like a primary background color, it's a semantic token. And the fourth one is component specific tokens, wherein you're very specific, okay, this is a component level token, it's a button. So these are the 3 to 4 levels of tokens which you might hear me speaking after a few slides. So yeah, where does this entire talk about design system even comes into the picture? It's because variables, as I mentioned earlier, can be good devices to actually manage your design systems. Another big sentence here: with variables, we can implement design tokens through aliasing variables, which allows a variable to inherit another variable's value as its own. Super confusing, right? No worries. I have an example for that. So example, you have created a variable A, very simple name. You have given it a value of 0000000 with a space black. And what you want to do is create variable B, and you're just calling variable A into it. You have not given any value there. You're saying variable A is black, variable B will also be black. If variable A is pink, variable B will also be pink. So you created this system in a way that whatever happens to variable A happens to variable B. So this is called aliasing, and with styles, you cannot do aliasing. Yep. From classes in Java to now in design inheritance. Yes, there's some programmatic language coming in the field of design, but I think it is the way it is. So yeah, whatever happens to variable A happens to variable B. If you still don't understand, I would like to give an example from this movie called Rab Ne Bana Di Jodi. It's a movie in 2008. Another movie where SRK played a double role, not to my surprise. So in that movie, there is this character called Raj Kapoor, which is his second role. He's the one who has a lot of swag. And one day, what happens is this guy and Anushka Sharma, they qualify for the final and they go to a pani puri eating competition. And eventually, they have a lot of pani puri, and this guy is full. But when he returns to his home as his first character, which is Surinder Sani, he is full because Raj is full. It's because at the end of the day, they are the same person. Whatever happens to Raj happens to Surinder. If I punch Raj, there will be bruise in Surinder's face. Basically, as Martin Scorsese himself says, absolutely aliasing at its finest. There's none like it. This is actually a real quote, by the way, from Martin. He said this in 2008 after seeing Rabne Banati Chodi. Yep. You know what can be aliased? Styles. All of these things which I just said, calling each other, etc., styles cannot do it. It's very basic. And why did I talk about aliasing again? Because aliasing actually unlocks scalability and management in your design system. So tying this back to the design token examples which I gave initially, which is this one, you have your global token, semantic token, component specific token, these four. Remember these? So with variables, what you can do is you can actually achieve all of this. You define a hex code, call it something, you can call it a primary background color, you can call it a button primary background color. You can set up this entire thing using variables. But with styles, you cannot do it because they follow a one-on-one mapping, which basically means you can do this. There's a hex code, you call it green 100. This is a very common example. Even in this example, which I show you here, there is a hex code here, and I'm calling it red 100. That's it. That's where the entire thing ends. Or you can do this. You can be extra smart and say, you know what? I will set 00FFD7 as my primary background color. Initially, you might think it's a very smart choice, but going ahead, you will realize there's a lot of components in the design system. You can have a button. Button can be of three types, which is primary, secondary, tertiary. Each button will have a three different state: disabled, hover, active. So for each of these, if you're going to create a style, I cannot imagine how crowded your right panel will be. So it doesn't make sense to follow this. That's why a lot of people stick with this first option, which is you reference a hex code to a global token. This is an example which I've taken from the Figma website, and that's where the power of variables come into play. You define something called pink 600, you use it everywhere, and one day you are like, you know what, I'm changing pink 600 to something light. The moment you do that, all things here change to a lighter shade. You might think this is possible with styles as well. Yes, I agree. But things change when one day you wake up and say, nay, I want to use purple 600 for a few of these components. With variables, it's very easy. But with styles, you have to actually go manually and do all of these. I'll be honest, this concept took me some time to understand. Uh, I only understood it when I actually went hands on and did an example, and I realized, okay, this is nuts. And that itself takes a lot of time. And if I actually start doing it, that itself will take like 30 or 60 minutes. So looking at the time, we cannot do that, but I would suggest this video from this YouTuber Design Pilot. He has done a good job of explaining how different variables and styles are in terms of design tokens. I would recommend watching it. It's a pretty good video. Um, yeah, coming to the takeaways of this section is variables can be used to call other variables. Styles cannot do that. Aliasing variables allows for scalability and ease of management of design tokens, which is not possible with styles. And it's a personal recommendation as well as Figma's recommendation. Use variables for your global or primitive tokens like these. These are the basic building blocks of your project, right? Blue 700, 800, gray 100, 200. Use variables for this instead of styles, because if you're building something in the future, this will become very handy. So those are the takeaways from this section. But now it's time for the demo. Uh, some words here you might not understand now. I'll be talking about creating a collection, renaming it, deleting it, creating groups. What's the difference between a collection and a group? Uh, Actually creating variables. There are multiple type of variables. I'll be talking about them, giving you examples. And what's the meaning of scoping? How do you actually do this aliasing thing, which I mentioned a lot of times in the last 5 minutes? And how to apply these variables you created. And then there are modes. Modes are basically all the dark mode, English to Hindi, magic picture showed, how to do that. And I think inheritance, I think one of you mentioned in the chat as well, how does inheritance work? Before I start the demo, a few things to notice. Variables is currently in open beta. It's a work in progress product. Sometimes, very rarely, you might see a few bugs. So that's totally fine. It's an open beta product. But yeah, I think that's about the theory bit. Time for the demo. I'll move to my demo file, and I have a starter kit ready, which has these styles. So I have these styles blue 50 to blue 900, and I have these styles gray 50 to gray 900, which I'll be using to create an application for myself. With styles, what you would usually do is you select this, you go here and you create a style, or you can go to local styles, choose a color, take this eyedropper, do this, and save it, which I won't do because it's not a style ka demo, it's variables ka demo. So what I'll do there here is I will create variables. So where do you find variables? It's on your top right. And you will only see this when you're not selecting anything, by the way. If you're selecting some element like this, you cannot see it. So you have to deselect everywhere, press on escape. You'll see this option called local variables here. So for the context of time, I will only create these five, which are blue 100, blue 500, 300, 700, and 900, basically odd numbers. So I'll click on open variables. The moment I do this, this panel comes up. The very first prompt is create a variable, which is on dead center, but on the top left, you'll see something called collection. And it says create collection, rename collection, and delete collection. So collections are nothing but it's a set of related variables you put together. If you're an engineering student, I would replace the word collection with a database, for example. And this entire variable thing is a database of sorts where you store stuff and you call it into your design. So what I will do is, since these are colors, I will actually rename this collection to primitives. So these are primitive raw values I have. So I've saved them. And the next step I have to do is create a variable. So I click on this and you see four options: color, number, string, and boolean. So these are the four available right now. They're going to introduce text styles and other stuff in the future in version 2. Since this is a color, I will go with color and I will give this name blue 100. Fairly simple. You take this eyedropper, go and store it. Similarly, you do it for others. So I will store blue 300. I will do that. This step is pretty boring, but I kind of wanted you to experience how it feels to create a variable for the first time as well. So I create blue 700, take your eyedropper, do this. This step is pretty similar to styles wherein you do the same thing, but the power of variables is you can call each other. With local styles, you cannot do that. So once this is ready, I will start the gray bit, which is again color. I call it gray 100. I go here, take the eyedropper, do this. After some point, you might be bored thinking, okay, can I duplicate it? Yes, you can duplicate it. So you can right click here. There's an option called duplicate, and it will do this. Another shortcut which someone figured out on Twitter accidentally is you can click on Shift Return or Shift Enter, and this actually creates duplicates for you pretty easily. But again, I anyways have to rename this. So this is gray to, I think, 300. This is gray 500, and then this is gray 700, and this is gray 900. Then I have to actually go manually and take this eyedropper. 300 is set, 500 is set, 700 yes, and the final one is 900. So I set these variables, yes, but it looks crowded. What I can do is I can group these together. So what I can do is I can select blue 100, press shift, select till 900, and you right click and there's an option called new group with selection. So you can click it. You will see a new group title on the left. You can actually name it as blue, or I would suggest you do color blue. So color basically becomes your folder if you use the slash. That's another short tip I would suggest. You go again to all variables. You haven't created a group for gray, so I'll do that as well. So new group with collection, I will name this as gray. But again, if can I move this here? No, I don't want it to be part of this. Yeah. So you can reorder this blue and gray. So these are part of your colors. So these are basic steps you can do to create your first variables. Uh, I have created a cheat sheet for myself because this is a long demo. So I've done this. I'll mark this in green. The second thing is you set your spacing tokens. So you might be thinking, Sooraj, you talked about color variables a lot since the very first moment you started talking about variables. Is there nothing else you can do with variables? You can actually use spacing tokens as well. So spacing is nothing but, you know what spacing is. What's the width between your buttons? What's your corner radius? Stuff like those. You can actually define spacing as well in here. So that again is a primitive value, which is your very raw value you start with. So the thing with spacing is it's a number, right? You have a spacing of 8, 16, 32, the table of 8, yes. So you go to create variable, select a number, and now, for example, I will say, you know what, I have 1, I will name it 1, and the value is 4. So for 1, I'm using a table of 4 here for my spacing. I do shift enter 4 times. I call it 2, I call it 3 and 4. And I will call this, okay, I will use a spacing of 8, which I think I'll mostly use, 12 and 16. So I've set this up, and again, I can create this as a group. I can call it spacing. So all of this is a build-up uh, to see the magic. It will take some time, but once you reach here, you will feel like you have reached the top of a mountain. It's the journey that matters. So you have set this up. It's not a part of colors, by the way. This should be a separate thing. So yeah, your spacing in here, your colors, all of this is set. So I'll mark this as green as well. Okay, you have defined your primitives. Great. Now comes the time to actually define your tokens. And this is where variables come into the picture. So what you can do is you create a new collection. So this is basically a new folder in a way. And now I will call something, I'll call it color tokens, easy to remember. And what I will do is, so I'll show you what I'm going to build now. So this is where context comes in. So Figma, if you go to their video, the config video and the video which they put on YouTube, they actually build this and teach you variables with it. I feel it's okay, but at the same time, it's a very high fidelity thingy. I would prefer starting something as simple as this to focus on the variable bit and not how beautiful it looks in the first place. So I will be building this with you and how you can apply variables to actually make this a proper thing. So now you know that, okay, what I will do is I will start with this and then I will define the tokens a bit. So I'll go to frame. This is pretty simple. I'll take one of the phones. Let's go with the Pro. And I'll start typing in the names. So I have a fruit shop called A1 Fruits. Not a great name, to be honest, but the products are A1, by the way. So I put the name in here, make it bold. Then I have things like fruit, price, quantity, subtotal, etc. So I'll take the text option, fruit. I don't need this. 16 works. And what else do we have? Price, quantity, subtotal. This is a basic example of a cart, as you can see. Um, and then you have quantity. I could have basically done this before and come to the demo. I know that, but I really didn't want to do because, again, I wanted to show you how organic it would feel because I'm pretty sure some of you would go back after this demo and actually try this out. So this is how I actually tried it. सुबह पनवेल जाना है. Fun fact, my college was in Panvel. I completed my engineering from Pillai College, and I live in Thane, by the way. So I used to travel 2 hours daily just in trains. But that was not the sad part. Uh, the sad part is from Thane to my house in Thane, it used to take 1 hour because the bus services are great in Thane. You should definitely try them out. I'm in a Panvel train right now. Hello there from Pillai. Yes. Uh, the good thing about Panvel is it's a starting train, right? If you are from Panvel, great. If you are not in Panvel, for example, if you are in Kharghar or something, things might be a bit difficult. And I hope they increase the frequency of trains one day. Your office was in Thane. Great. The thing with Thane again is if you're lucky, you will find an auto. Uh, if you're not lucky, you might be stranded. But hey, you can at least get an auto. It's not Bangalore. Uh, computer science batch student 2018. Wow, you know. Uh, what else? What else? Bro didn't hesitate. No, no. And I'm hearing a lot of stories from my Bangalore friends. Uh, I hear they want to attend a function at 8 p.m. They have to open your Uber, Ola at 5 p.m. and get lucky. Okay. I'm in Thane. I'm hearing a lot of shouts for Thane, by the way, that we can have a meetup or sorts in Thane. We can definitely explore that because I'm seeing a lot of support from Thane, so very happy about that. Some people might say Thane is not a part of Mumbai, but you can ignore those claims. Duplicate use करने का such things. Yeah, I'm trying to do that. I'm trying to do that. So you have your total in the end. So you have your three fruits, and you have a total at the end. Anyone from Khagar? I'm pretty sure I saw some people from Khagar who registered. So you have this set. I will create a basic line and that's it on the basic wireframe. Andheri. Yeah. I think Andheri is pretty famous. I think third or fourth. I think after Bangalore, the most people of attendees from this event are from Andheri and Goregaon, which is pretty nice. I feel for people from Virar. It's a different place. Okay, enough enough me chatting. I think coming back to the application. So this is the basic thing you build, and now you hit, okay, you know what, I need to create a design token for this. So you go back to your variables. So the thing on my checklist is now you have to create a color variable. So I will just delete this. I'm in my color token wala page, create variable color. So for my application, I have a background. I would like to call it surface primary for now. And it's white, right? So you can leave it as what you think, but actually no, it's white. But what you can do is you can go to libraries, and this is where the aliasing wala thing happens. You can call one of your variables which you defined in primitives. I would like my background to be gray 100. So I will define this. And the thing is, one day if my brand team comes and says, you know what, gray 100 is now a bit more darker or lighter, the moment I change gray 100, for example, I make this red for now, what will happen in color tokens is this also becomes that shade. So you can slowly understand where this thing comes from. So I'll set it back to something similar what it was earlier. Um, okay, then I go forward and say I can see a few text in here. So text also needs some color. I will go here and I will name something text primary. I can use, what do you say, grade 900 works. Yep. And then I create something for my text secondary. So secondary text would be something like this. So I will rename it as text secondary. I will use a lighter shade. I will go with something like a gray 500, for example. Okay, there's one more thing which I missed, which is a add to cart button. Without an add to cart button, your Dukan won't work. So I will do this in auto layout, and there will be some color to it. For example, something. Okay, where's the fill? Yeah, here. I have some random color for now, but I know for a fact that's not what I want. So I can create a color variable saying, you know what, I want a button primary color. I want the color to be our blue 700, but you also need something for the text inside. So I will also choose a color for that. So button primary, button text primary. I'll go with gray 900 again, or gray 100 or 300 because that's light. You can read it. So you have done this color. Perfect. What's next? Let me go to my planner again. You have done your colors. Great. What next? You have your spacing and radius. So your basic example here I would give is your button might have something as a corner radius. So I'll actually create a new collection called spacing tokens. So here again, I'll be using the concept of aliasing. I will do a number. So something like spacing, no, I will call it radius, radii or radius small. I'll go to value and here I will choose one. Spacing one, if you remember, is nothing but 4. Yeah. So one day, if your team says, you know what, we are not going to follow 4K table, we will do 8 table. Once you change it here, all of the values in your spacing tokens will automatically change. Uh, I will do something similar. I will choose radii medium. I will set it to 2. There is an option of large, and then you have an option of Excel, and I will choose it. It's 4. So you've set this, perfect. You're done with your spacing wale tokens. This is the interesting bit. Strings with text and amount. So all of these values you see here, all of these are static. If I change something here, I can change it. All of these are on the screen. It's not managed by tokens as of now. So what you will do is I'll create a collection called text tokens, and text tokens will have these values, apple, mango, guava, all of these will be stored as a variable, and I'll just call it here. Similarly for price, subtotal, and everything, you will just define it here and call it that. So what I will do is I quickly create a string variable, which is the third type. I call it, for example, fruit or type. Okay, I will start simple. I will create fruit1, and the value is apple. Similarly, you do shift enter, fruit2, you call it mango, fruit3, not 4, guava. So you did the fruits, but you also have these text. So you go again to string. You might think, this is so extensive. Why am I even doing this? But trust me, all of these things will come alive in the end when you see where all of these things change. So you have a price. I think some of you must have guessed it. Uh, Depending on the, okay, I won't say anything. Quantity, and then you have your subtotal. You must notice that not your variable name and the value is not necessary to be the same. So I can call something like SB, and I can give it a subtotal. So you did your fruits. Okay, you have your total as well. So I will make one more variable, set it as total. You have your add to cart. Do not forget it. So that's my CTA. I will call it add to cart. Great. Your text bit with the names is done. Now I will create number variables for your prices. So I will write something like fruit one price. Apple is 30 rupees. Uh, I don't think it's a practical number, but works. Fruit two mango, 25 rupees. I wish it was. And another is fruit three. Okay, it's not mango, it's price. So you can fruit three price, which is 15. Great. Then you have the quantities as well. So I'll just quickly make this fruit one quantity. I set it as 0. Another number, fruit two quantity, fruit three quantity. So that's done. And then you have to create it for your subtotals as well. I now actually feel pain for my developer friends who have to do all of these every single time. So you have fruit three. Yeah, man, mangoes are out of season, but I hope it comes back soon. And then you also have your total quantity, which is again, I'm keeping it as 0. And I'm also keeping a total price, which is your addition of all the subtotals. So these are, what should I call it? I can call it fruit, or I'll just call it text. I'll go back to all variables. I can name these as new group and call it something like amount. Okay, great. This thing has also been done. So I'll mark that as green. Okay. All your setup is done now. Fun fact, avocado is a fruit. I actually didn't know. So all of your setting, your primitives, your tokens, everything is done. Now comes the fun part of actually applying it to your design. So what you have to do is you close this thing. So first we'll go with colors. I'll just move this a bit to the left. Uh, so the first thing I'll do is colors token. So I'll select this and I have to change the fill. For fill, so small note of disclaimer here. This is where a lot of people do mistakes. So what you might do is you actually go to libraries and select gray 100 as your background color. You can do that, but it's basically using styles again if you look at it. हमने जो भी variables बनाया, there is no use of it if you actually go here and select gray 100. You actually have to scroll a bit below and you come to the section called color tokens. You have something called surface primary, right? Select that. Pretty dim, yes. The next color we have is, I think, your button. You go to fill, go to library, and I choose button primary. And then we have the text. So I will select all of these text, go to fill, go to library, text primary. Similarly for these, go to fill, select text primary. And then you have your fruits and other things. These are secondary text for you. So you have to go to libraries, go to text secondary, just apply it. You did all of these, and now you're like, you know what? This is very dim. I go to local variables, change my primitive. I think it was gray 100. I can choose it a bit to be light, and you will notice whatever I do changes here, it will be automatically applied here as well because you're not only changing gray 100, but you're also changing your surface primary as well. So you have set this up in terms of colors and everything else, but I think this is left, which is your button text primary. And remember, there was this option of spacing as well, which I discussed earlier. So you go here and you'll notice there's a small icon here and you can click on it. You can click these things. But again, it's a primitive value, so do not click on a primitive value. Go to something like this, which is a spacing token. I will go with a medium. 8 is a good value. No, I will go with something like 4. 4 looks better. So those were colors and spacing. The last bit is string. So all the things which are set up for string, for example, apple, to set a variable for this, so you set the fill, which is great, but you have to also change the content. So for that, I will go here on the right. There's an option called apply variable. Click on that. And you will see there's a lot of things here. It's pretty crowded. But then you see fruit one, apple, you click that. Similarly, for fruit two, you can go there, click on mango. You will not see any changes on the screen right now. Fruit three, guava. But if your client says, you know what, we are not going to sell guavas from now on. We are going to sell something like maybe a banana. The moment you change your database or your variable collection, the thing changes here as well because you're basically calling this value to your screen. So all your content is managed this. This is basically your CMS in a way, your content management system. Whatever you change here will happen there. So you have set these things to your text tokens. Similarly, I will quickly go and select these. So this is fruit one price. I can actually do this. I can search for price. Fruit one price is 30. Fruit two price is 25. Fruit three price 15. Yes. And I think I have to do these as well. So I will just quickly do that. So I will go to quantity, fruit one quantity here. Similarly, for the other two quantities as well, I'll just quickly set it. You have a total quantity as well, which is an addition. And similarly, you have your subtotal. And then you have your total. So, so this is a total value, which is total price. So okay, there's one more thing here, which is your add to cart. I always forget about add to cart for some reason. So which was my CTA, I believe. So I applied that. Again, if you want to give a small example, if I change my CTA to checkout, that will change here as well. And since it was an auto layout, it fits pretty well. But I'll stick with that to cart for now. So I have applied my tokens as well. Pretty great. We are slowly and steadily progressing. But before I go to the magic part, which is modes, I will also show you one more thing, which is called scoping. So if you go to variables and you will see these numbers, for example, this is a pretty easy one. I will show you. You have set this fruit one price to 30, but on the right, you will see the small edit variable icon. Click on that. You will see that it shows something called number scoping. So by default, it's set to all. So which basically means wherever there's a number on this entire screen, everywhere there will be a number of 30 available. For example, if I go to add to cart, I go here, I can see these options here as well. I don't want to set my the button radius to something like this. This is not actually required, and this is too much. So what I can do is I can scope, saying, you know what, you should not be visible there. I'll just deselect this. I only need it when you have a text content. So if I do this and I go back, so this is for fruit one price. So if I go back to this radius example which I gave you, you will see that fruit one price is no longer available there because I said, you know what, don't go there. So it's basically scoping. You should only see this value at a certain place. You should not see it somewhere else. So when you create variables, I would really recommend whenever you do this, whenever you create a variable, go to this, set it to certain things so that you don't see it everywhere. So this is a text. So similarly, you will do it for all. And you can do this for other things as well. So please do scope your variables. Otherwise, you might get confused once you go here. You will see all the variables here, which you really don't uh, should see in the first place. So that's the concept of scoping. But now it's time for modes. This is all where all your hard work kind of starts paying off. The sad thing about modes is the paid feature, uh, Adobeization, I guess. But I hope you get a chance to explore a paid instance at one point in your life. And so the basic plan is that for a professional, educational, and the organization plans, you can create four modes. If you are an enterprise plan, first you are not only rich, but you can create 40 modes. So what's a mode in the first place? I will go here. So I have all of these things. So what I will do first is create a dark mode. Dark mode basically relates to colors. So I'll go to my color tokens. And you will see that there is an option called new variable mode. So this is in a paid plan, so I can do it. If you're sadly in a free plan, you cannot. So you can create, I can create one more mode here. So the moment I do this, it creates mode one and mode two. So what I will say is this is my light mode and this is my dark mode. Fair? And this first column, whichever you have, is the default mode your screen will be in. So for dark mode, the thing I have to do now is I have to change these colors, right? For dark mode, your surface primary will not be light like this color. It will be something dark. Again, don't do the mistake of selecting a primitive here. Go to your color tokens and select something. So, okay, in this case though, since we are in color tokens, you can do it. but not in the actual screen. Since this is gray 100, I will do something like a gray 900. That works. My text will be white. In a dark mode, I will go with, I think gray 100 works. For secondary text, I'll select 300. For a primary button, I will make it a bit lighter so that it's visible. I'll select blue 500. And for button text primary, I think I will prefer keeping it at, I'll make it a bit darker so that you can read it. So I set this up pretty great. So now since you have set it up, I can actually go to my screen here. And the moment you come here, you will see there is this new icon which has popped called change variable mode. So what you're going to do is you click on that, color tokens. So you have two options. You have light and dark. So the moment you do a dark, this actually changes. So I will just change the color of my page a bit. So yeah, you have these. Uh, you'll see that this hasn't changed because I didn't create a variable for that, which is pretty sad. So even fruits has to go for now. Sorry, but yeah. So this automatically changed to dark. It's so easy, light, dark, pretty simple. So this is just one mode. So if you want to create another mode, for example, language, so you go back to here. So language is basically for your text. And I'll be pretty honest. When I was working as a practice for this demo, like I was trying the same example, what I did is I created all the tokens almost in a similar collection. I realized that I cannot create another mode here for text because these are colors. So hard lesson, you cannot move your tokens very freely. If I am like, okay, this is in color tokens, I want to move these to like spacing tokens, for example. You currently cannot do that. You have to have some third-party plugins to do that, which is not recommended. So when you're creating your variables and your system, be very sure on how you are putting it. So lesson learned the hard way. Now I created different collections for different things. So this time I'm ready. So I will create one more mode here, and this is your English mode, but Hindi का एक अलग ही swag होता है. I'll create a Hindi mode. To save some time, what I've done is I have all of these things ready. So your fruit, which is basically a type, I can paste these. Price is कीमत. I'll paste that here. Quantity. Uh, Pretty fancy names. Apple, Aam Aadmi, Mango, Guava. I'm seeing the chat, by the way. Total add to cart is cart. Okay, these are set. Perfect. So you're in an English and Hindi mode here. So again, if you go here, since the mode is set, Figma is pretty smart. So you go here, there's an option now called text tokens. So you do Hindi, all of these changes to Hindi. Why didn't this change? I'll just go back to my variables. I might have not defined it, or I must have not applied it. So I think I haven't applied it. So you go to fruit, go to tokens, and again, you must see that all of this is crowded, which is not great. So you have to actually scope it. I put it as type. At the moment I apply a variable, this changes automatically. I go to apply variable again. I think this is price. This is quantity. I think I renamed it like this. And you have also a subtotal, which is SB. So another thing you must have noticed is the way you name your variables will basically define how easy it is for you to play with variables. If you give a very complex name, it will be very difficult for you to even think, okay, what did I name it? In this case, it's pretty simple, fruit one price, fruit one description, stuff like those. So naming your variables is very important. I'm not asking to naming your layers for now, but at least you can change uh, your variable names. I think this is total. So you have this ready. So now since you have already done it once, Figma understands, okay, you have done this multiple times. So it's very easy for me to switch to dark, switch to English, switch to light again. So that's how modes work. And I will mark this as green. Now comes the part of inheritance, which someone mentioned before. For that, first I will do is I'll just set this to auto for now. And one good way to showcase your designs is having them side by side. So one thing you can do is obviously make a duplicate of it, make this as dark. You can make this as light, make this as dark. Great. Another way I want to show you is from the concept of inheritance. So what I will do is I will use either a frame or a section. I will go with a section for this. I will create this. I see some questions. I will answer them. You can also use the Q&A section, by the way, wherein you can upvote some questions so that those come up and I can answer them fast. So what I'm doing here is I created a section, gave it some random color, and I will move this. So this is currently in light and this is in English. So I've set this. The moment, so you see that here, I should name my frame a bit at least. So this is my, I call it home. So English +1, you can see this here, but this currently doesn't have anything attached to it. But the moment I move this in here, your section will also inherit those values in a way. So you have light and English. So what would happen next is you can create a duplicate of this and I can set it in, okay, I'll try using an example for this. I have light and English, so this should take that up. And the second thing which I'll do is I'll try taking it out. This is like a live experiment of sorts. Uh, so if I put this in, if I, for example, make this as, so okay, there's nothing visible here because I actually didn't set it. So you go here, you set it as light, and for example, you set it as English, for example. So now you see that your section also has some variable property to it. But what you can now do is bring this out and you create one more section, for example. And now what I will do is I'll bring this here. I'll set this to, this time it's dark. Okay, not the frame, by the way, the section itself. So I will make this as dark. I'll make this as Hindi. So what I will do now is I'll bring this out, make this as auto. Auto means it will change as per your definition. So here it's light and English. The moment I bring it here, it becomes dark and in Hindi. It's like a cool magic trick of sorts wherein the value changes depending on what frame it is. Just because you have defined the section in a way that whatever is in this section is light and in English, whatever happens in this section is in dark and Hindi. So these are just two modes which I showed you. If you have multiple modes, showcasing this to a client becomes very easy because you need not actually make it. You just need to define it in a variable, and that is all is set. So that's on inheritance. Now we are reaching the final bit. I'll go back to my deck. And for this, I have a message from one of my favorite again who says, अपनी कुर्सी की पेटी बांध लो मौसम बिगड़ने वाला, because now I'll be talking about advanced prototyping. So advanced prototyping is a feature which you can access once you have set up all of these variables, all of this built up, which I've done for 1 hour, right? Uh, Once you set up all of this, you can totally leverage the power of advanced prototyping, wherein what I will do is, so I get this out, okay? I made this, now comes the time to prototype it. So आम जिंदगी में what you would do is you can duplicate it. For example, your interaction is I change, when I click on a plus, this should change to 1. So I'll make a frame for that. I'll make a subtotal, which is 30. And then I have to make this 1. I have to make this 30 as well. Your second interaction is someone orders a mango. I have to create one more frame for that, which is one. I will do 25. The quantity changes to 2, and 30 plus 25 is 55. You get the gist of what I'm doing here. For each interaction, I have to create a new frame. Some of you might say you can use interactive components, but for even that, you have to create multiple component sets to achieve that effect. If your luck is not great, and if I turn up and being the max guy who orders 50 or 60 apples, you cannot go on and create 60 frames just for that one interaction. It's just not feasible. And even if you do that, if someone says, you know what, I want one more mango to it, that's another frame. There's a lot of effort that goes in. But since you've already done variables, I will show you a small demo. I'll go to my, yeah, this is my research wala page wherein I actually, this is the first thing which I built with variables when I got to know about it. So I will go to my prototype mode, which is Shift E, by the way. And there is this option, by the way, wherein you can preview the prototype. This is another feature which they launched at config. You need not go to a new thing. You just need to click on this thing. It will pop it up, or you can actually go here and there's an option called preview. It's shift and space. So what you can do now is you can click on a plus. It automatically changes the value to 4. I can do this n number of times, by the way. I can do this. I can do this. You will see all the values here are changing. You'll also notice that there's something on the left here, which also keeps on changing depending on the value which I add here. I can also set a constraint saying, you know what, I only have 5 apples. I cannot go above that. My inventory only has 5 apples. I can set a constraint that after 5, this thing will be disabled. I have the option to do that. And the beauty of all of this is even if I proceed to a new screen, all of these values are still retained. So you must think how many screens I used for this. It's just one screen, which is this. That's it. All your interactions which you did is just one screen, no 100 screens. How did you do it? I'll just show a small glimpse since we are on time. I go back to my prototyping mode, and there's this new thing which is called set variable. So when you go to interactions, there's this option called set variable. And this, if you're again an engineering student, you might understand a bit of this very easily. Even if you're not, it's pretty simple. So what you have to do is you must again remember your name of your variables. If it's pretty simple, you can understand it. So you can click on this set variable. The first thing which I've set is set this variable. So what should happen when you click on a plus ideally? This number should change to 1. What's that variable? It's quantity mango. So whenever you press on a plus, your quantity of mango should increase by 1. So you can actually write that. If I want to increase it by 2, I can do that. If I want to multiply by 2, I can do that. Divide by 2, minus 2, you can do all of that. It's like you can actually write a mathematical expression inside Figma now to actually make it feel like a real application on the go. The second thing which I did here is whatever increases here, your quantity of the cart should also increase, which is your total number of items in here. That's another mathematical expression. But you will also notice that the moment I press a plus, your subtotal should also increase. So the moment it becomes 4 into 1, your subtotal becomes 4. If it's 2, it becomes 8. So it always runs the moment you click it. So that's set. And then you also have the option to, you have to set the total to the entire total. So you will see that the price total is the addition of subtotal mango plus subtotal apple plus subtotal Goa. So you do that, and there's a few other stuff as well. So if your quantity of mango is more than 0, have these things. Yeah, it's purely, it feels like I'm back to my first year or second year of coding, wherein you had those if-else loops. Uh, so yeah, mathematics is back. I really don't like maths, but sadly the days here we have to leverage maths to make these things work. So there are other variable types like Boolean, etc. You can check if your value is 0, your add to cart button will be disabled. If your value is 1 or anything more, the button will be enabled. You can do all of these things with variables. Another thing I can showcase you is there is this loading example which I just experimented. I think one of the Figma community advocates, which I follow a lot, he's called Mickey. He did this in the config stage as well, wherein if I just run it, it's basically a loader application wherein as soon as the numbers increase, your these values will also increase. So this is again done by just 2 frames, um, and there's nothing else. So it looks very simple, and it is pretty simple as well. So these are some basic examples which um, you can do with variables. But for me, I think the major takeaways are you can do the dark mode and frame resizing. And this thing, especially with advanced prototyping, this is where all the buildup you did for variables actually, pull off. This is where most of the good things happen. I'll go back to my deck, which I think is pretty much done now. It's time for Q&A. I will stop sharing my screen. I will go to the Q&A section and I will just answer a few questions there. Is the modes feature available with a student college ID? I think yes. Uh, you definitely can access that with a college student ID. You can create 4 modes with it, which is pretty great. The good thing about Figma is they're always in support for college education. So they have enabled this option for free for our student IDs. Can we upload an Excel sheet or link documents to set up variables? Currently, no, but I'm pretty sure there will be a plugin soon which will allow you to do that. I remember seeing an interview wherein one of the Figma community advocates actually talked to people in the design system industry to check how are they leveraging variables in the first place. And they actually mentioned, you know what, we actually create an Excel first to plan it out. Instead of creating on the go, you plan it out in such a way that it's easy for you to create. So currently, no, but I think this will be definitely a good feature to have because I can definitely see this being pretty useful. So apart from the fruit page, if we created more related screen, whatever text icons we added in the new screens would have to be mapped again to variable values. Uh, so I'm assuming you're saying there's a new screen and those values will still be mapped. Yeah, you can actually map those values. For example, I can share my screen again to show you. I think I made an extra screen to show that. Um, for example, in this case, you click on proceed, it goes to this screen, right? So you'll notice that cart values quantity mango is still being mapped. And if I play this again, what happens is the values which you set here, they actually proceed here. So it's like a local session of sorts. The values stay. But the moment you, like, even if I close this now, but it doesn't impact your local variables at all, by the way. If I go to my card information, all of this is set the way it is. So nothing of these changes. These are all local session changes that happens. But yes, to answer your question, the value does change if you move to a next screen, which is again a very good thing. Do the numbers fall to a negative integer? If yes, how to avoid it? In my example, which I showed you, the numbers do go to negative. Yes. There's an option called conditional, wherein you actually check, this quantity, price quantity, is this less than 0? If yes, you make it like you can add a text saying you cannot change it or something. So advanced prototyping is a different world in itself. It's like a proper 1 hour session again. So that's why I just showed you a glimpse. But if you actually sit and do, if you're interested, by the way, in an advanced prototyping session, do let us know. We can plan something on those lines. But yeah, you do have a conditional option in advanced prototyping wherein you can check if it's a negative or a positive value. When you map a button, do you map the button's background and its text separately? Yes, because the button color is a color token and your text is your text token. So you have to map them separately because those are 2 different things in itself. And that's why when you move from a light mode to a dark mode, your button color changes, but at the same time, your button text also changes. Similarly, for your Hindi to English mode, right? Your add to CTA, add to CAT button changes to something in Hindi because you have set it up that way. So yes, you have to map a button BG and text separately. Yes. I think this question is pretty similar to the negative wala piece. You can actually do it, definitely. If is this a free feature, and if not, what part of the features are available for free? So modes are definitely a paid feature. Advanced prototyping and variables, the basic one, are free features, I feel. But yeah, I think variables are definitely free. You can try out variables. The mode thing is not there. So that's sad. Looking at the chat, uh, for advanced prototyping, definitely, I think it's a very interesting workshop we can have. I really like the feature. I'm currently exploring ways wherein we can leverage advanced prototyping in your B2B world. The example which I gave right now is a very generic example, by the way. Um, Generic example of like a add to cart, right? It's a very B2C example, but I know a lot of UX designers here are in the B2B industry. So I'm currently figuring out where we can use all of these things in the B2B world. Uh, I like the board behind you. There's a lot going. Oh yes, there's a lot going. This is a proper like a design meeting space, and this is not design work, by the way. These are behavior science teams work. They are interested in the human psychology and how design comes into life. So Fractal does a lot of good work in that space. Uh, are you a UI developer? I've been asked this question a lot of times. There's a feedback form which Rishabh has put in the chat. You will also receive this link via email. But please take out 1 minute of your time to fill it because it would help us to improve our future workshops as well. And feedback means a lot because we always are on the look to improve as a community. So please do fill out. We'll also send this over email. And I hope you all took out something from this workshop. You enjoyed it. And if you have any feedback, feel free to put it in the feedback form. And at Friends of Figma Mumbai, we'll be doing more such events in the future. We have few things planned, by the way. So do keep a lookout on our socials for the same. We'll be announcing a few things in the future. Time for photos. Yeah, if you can get a few people turning on the cameras, we can definitely take a small group photo if that works for everyone. I think we have around 30 people left. And it really means a lot that you stuck by till the end because I can definitely feel that you guys actually wanted to know more about this piece. But if you can get a few people on the cameras, that would be nice as well. Thanks, Yash, Sid, Bhupendra, Tejas, Rohit, Bhavya, and everyone else who just turned on the cameras. I know it's 9:30, um, but yeah, it means a lot, and I'm really happy you guys stayed till the end. Perfect. Okay. Thanks again for joining. My heart is totally full with all the responses we have seen so far. And I hope all of these things in the workshop will really help you in designing your projects going forward. I'm not saying styles are bad, but there's a good chance of using variables when you should actually use them. There's one more question in the Q&A. Okay, I will address that. So do you suggest that we use variables more than system less because it looks similar? Um, so the thing with variables and styles, again, you can use styles if you want to do things like basic gradients, your GIFs, your videos, and etc. I will never say styles are out of place. Variables, as Figma says, they are complement to the styles. They are. It's not like variables are to you are stop using styles. No, never. Styles will always be there until variables are so overpowered that one day you might all use variables. But I would suggest starting using variables from now for all your basic needs, like for basic color tokens and everything. The final question we have is, so that means conditionals are also paid. I'm not sure, but I feel it's free because it's not tied to modes in any way. It's just your variables and advanced prototyping, but I would definitely recommend you to check it out once. I feel it's a free feature, and I hope it's a free feature as well. Perfect. If you have any more questions, feel free to shoot out a mail at hello.ffmumbai@gmail.com, and I'll be more than happy to share my responses. You can also shoot me out on Twitter at Sooraj Nair underscore 19. But thanks once again for attending. It really means a lot, and I really hope to see all of these faces again in our next workshop happening in the future. Thanks once again, and I hope you have a nice day.